This will be a recap of day 3 in the trial against Lindsay Clancy. Today was another day full of emotional testimony as we heard from many first responders who were on the scene on January 24th, 2023. We heard testimony from 10 first responders, including officers, firefighters, and medics, but I'm only going to recap the testimony from the first few because it did become repetitive. These first responders were on the same scene, seeing the same thing, and the details are very hard to talk about, so there's no need to go over them multiple times. The first witness was Officer Stephen Hall, who has worked for the Duxbury Police Department since 2018. Hall testified that on January 24th, 2023, he arrived to the Clancy home at approximately the same time as Officer Josephine, and we'll talk about that officer's testimony next. Hall said that when they arrived, they walked through an open gate on the side of the home into the backyard, and that's when they saw Lindsay Clancy lying face down on the ground with her head towards the home. Hall said that Clancy had injuries to her wrist and neck that were bleeding, but not profusely. She appeared to be drifting in and out of consciousness. She would occasionally wake up or move her head before becoming unresponsive again. Hall said that Clancy was not speaking but appeared to be in pain and was moaning. Hall said that Patrick Clancy was standing near Lindsay when they first arrived, but soon after he went into the back sliding door to check on the children. Hall stated that he heard over the radio dispatch say Patrick could not wake them. He wasn't sure what this meant at first, but moments later he heard screaming from coming inside the home. That's when Officer Hall and Officer Josephine ran into the home and they went towards the basement where they heard Patrick's voice coming from. Hall testified that Patrick was extremely upset and repeatedly said, "I can't wake them up. I can't get them up." Now, I want to give everybody a warning. I'm about to talk about the discovery of the first child and the condition of their body. If you cannot listen to that, please scroll away from this video. Officer Hall entered a room in the basement that appeared to be used as a workout area, and that is where he found 3-year-old Dawson lying on his back. He described Dawson as discolored, with his skin appearing blue or purple. Hall called for paramedics and a supervisor before Dawson was picked up and rushed outside towards an ambulance. Hall then went back to the basement to look for the other children, and that is when he saw 5-year-old Cora and 8-month-old Callan lying motionless. Emergency personnel were already working on them, and at some point, Hall went back outside to tend to Lindsay Clancy. While Hall was outside, he confirmed that he observed a second-story window that was open, and he observed blood on that window and the shingles beneath it. Officer Hall remained near Lindsay Clancy as emergency medical personnel were treating her, and he said that she repeatedly attempted to remove the oxygen mask from her face, and at some point she was placed on a stretcher and taken to an ambulance. The next witness was Officer Brian Josephine. He has been with the Duxbury Police Department since 2020, and at the time that this occurred, he was working as a school resource officer. He confirmed that he arrived to the scene at approximately the same time as Officer Hall. Much of his testimony was repetitive from Hall's, so I'm only going to go over what was different. He stated that Dawson had bloodshot eyes in addition to the coloring that Officer Hall talked about, and Officer Josephine also mentioned Patrick Clancy screaming that Lindsay killed the effing kids, except he used the entire word. Officer Josephine described trying to give chest compressions to Cora while another officer was using a mask and a breathing bag to try to assist her. Josephine described injuries similar to those that he had seen on Dawson, and he also described blood that was near Cora's body. Josephine later returned upstairs and saw Patrick in the kitchen. He described Patrick as frantic, screaming, and appearing to be in shock, and at that point an ambulance was called for Patrick Clancy. The only other witness's testimony that I'm going to give a few details on comes from TJ Hussey, who has been with the Duxbury Fire Department for 32 years, and he's been a paramedic for 17 years. He's actually been a captain with Duxbury Fire Department since 2023. He was called shortly after 6 p.m. to come to the scene on January 24th, 2023, and in total, from 2 different fire departments, 6 people arrived initially in 3 separate vehicles. He also described hearing the screams from the basement, and he was able to see Patrick Clancy through the basement window unwrapping an exercise band from one of the child's necks, who he later found out to be Dawson. He also described Dawson's face being blue. He said that he had to put an all call in, which means basically all hands on deck, whether it was people from Duxbury or other fire departments. They called in a mutual aid ambulance, which is a shared system, getting more ambulances out there. They needed one for Lindsay, one for each of the children, and eventually one for Patrick based on the past testimony that we heard. He described the scene as getting chaotic very quickly. There were some objections raised by the defense today regarding the repetitive nature of the testimony from these first responders. They would have sidebars with the judge, but ultimately the testimony went forward. Today ended early. Tomorrow the jury is expected to take a field trip. I know that at some point they're expected to visit what once was the Clancy home. They may go to 3V and some other sites associated with this case, so I'm not sure if there will be any testimony or a recap tomorrow, but as soon as court proceeds with testimony, I will continue with these recaps. Let me know your thoughts so far on this trial. And above everything else, rest in peace to the 3 children at the center of this case, Cora, Dawson, and Callan.